Hello, everybody. We're back for another live stream. This week we're doing, or this week, tonight we're doing the mountain species. From Monday we did the desert species from the San Bernardino region, and we're gonna continue that tonight, but with the mountain region. I have with me tonight Alondra, my fiance, and Grace as well. Both of which returned from Monday. So.
Anyways, yes. Let us begin.
So just to recap, last time we talked about our desert region of San Bernardino County. That is our largest region. But we do have two other regions within this county. We've got our mountain region, which we're talking about tonight, and then we also have our valley region, which we'll hopefully talk about a little later this week in another art stream. So stay tuned for at least one more of this series. But just a bit about the county, and then we'll zoom back into our region. It's the largest county in the contiguous U.S. Outside of Alaska. It is our largest county. It is bigger than in square miles. It's over 20,000 square miles, which is bigger than the country of Switzerland in Europe. You could fit the country of Switzerland within San Bernardino County, which is kind of crazy. Because it's so big, and a lot of that is the desert. But we do have a couple of mountain ranges within this region. We have our San Bernardino Mountains. We have part of the San Gabriel Mountains, as well as part of the Little San Bernardino Mountains. So if you know where San Bernardino Valley is, to the north of that, you are going to directly hit, from San Bernardino, you're going to directly hit our San Bernardino Mountains, and those include pretty much most of what you're going to get east of the Cajon Pass, toward Mount San Gorgonio, as well as Mount San Bernardino, and some of those peaks are going to be still part of the San Bernardino Mountains. Those continue on toward the Morongo Basin. As you're heading toward Joshua Tree, you're going to start getting into the Little San Bernardino Mountains. Those have a lower elevation, but they are still considered mountains. Let me see what I've got my notes on those. Those are going to be between the Coachella Valley and Morongo Basin. They include some of the coolest temperatures and get the most precipitation of the area within Joshua Tree National Park, but they're just not gonna be the only thing in Joshua Tree National Park, but they are kind of on the edge of it as you get into the national park. And then if you go to the west of the Cajon Pass, you're going to get into the San Gabriel Mountains, where Mount San Antonio, also called Mount Baldy, is, and a little bit of those mountains are considered part of San Bernardino County, mainly from like right where Mount San Antonio, Mount Baldy is, and east of that is going to be San Bernardino County. West of that, you are getting into Los Angeles County. So those are our mountains. They include the Cajon Pass as well. That's one of our main passes between the mountain ranges, that enables people to be able to drive up into the high desert and out of it back down to the San Bernardino Valley and beyond. A lot of people have probably utilized it on their way up toward Las Vegas. If they're going up through the high desert, they're very likely going to go through the Cajon Pass on their way. It also includes access to places like Lido Creek, as well as Silverwood Lake, which is kind of within our San Bernardino Mountains to some extent, but it's a little further down on your way down the backside of those mountains in toward the high desert and the Cajon Pass. We have a couple of pieces of national parks. Like I said, part of Joshua Tree National Park is going to include some of those little San Bernardino mountains. You also have our Santa Snow National Monument. We mentioned in our last video that there's a national monument that includes part of the desert that's in the valley, and it continues all the way up into the mountains, and so that's going to be part of our mountain range region that we're talking about today, is the fact that we've got that national monument there as well. We also have part of the Angeles National Forest, which is going to be found in our San Gabriel Mountains, and then we've got our San Bernardino National Forest, which is in the San Bernardino Mountains. Both are going to be cared for by our federal government. And then you've got, again, multiple wilderness areas managed by the U.S. Bureau of Land Management. We've got several reservoirs and lakes within these mountains. Those include things like Big Bear Lake, Lake Arrowhead, Lake Gregory, Silverwood Lake, which is actually one of our reservoirs for the southeastern arm of the California Aqueduct. So if you have ever been in Central California or seen pictures of like the big aqueduct that's helping carry water from up north down to the southern part, central and southern parts of the state, it's actually going to kind of branch off into at least two different segments once you get into the Southern California area. One of them is going to head off toward Los Angeles, and the southeastern part is going to be coming toward part of the high desert, toward the mountains, and then it's going to kind of come up over a lower elevation part of the mountains down into the San Bernardino Valley and on into Riverside and Orange counties. But it's going to pass through Silverwood Lake, and it's just kind of some of it's going to be stored there as some of it is being pumped on up from there over the pass and down into the valley. Part of that water is eventually going to end up underground, which we might talk about in our valley talk. We also have Baldwin Lake, Green Valley Lake, Irwin Lake, and some things of that nature. There may also be some smaller kind of lakes, ponds, streams, things like that throughout these mountains. A lot of temporary streams will pop up different times of the year based on how much snow has melted or where you've got groundwater kind of seeping out of the ground, maybe downhill from an area where there's a surplus of water that's kind of filled the aqueduct or the groundwater storage area underground. We have towns and cities and villages up in these mountains. They include Fawnskin, which is in Big Bear Lake area on the western-ish side of the lake. We've got Cedar Pines Park, Cedar Glen, Sugarloaf, which is also near Big Bear, Moon Ridge, Agua Fria, Crest Park, Big Bear City, Running Springs, Crestline, Wrightwood, which is going to be in our San Gabriel Mountains closer toward Mount Baldy, Blue Jay, Arrow Bear, Sky Forest, Rim Forest, Twin Peaks, and then Mount Baldy, of course. You're going to get Lido Creek closer to the Cajon Pass area, like I mentioned. You'll also have Forest Falls and Oak Glen, which are kind of going up into the mountains, the San Bernardino Mountains, from the kind of southeastern side of where those mountains touch the San Bernardino Valley area. Those ones are more accessible from Yucaipa, Mentone, some of those parts of San Bernardino County in the valley, and you kind of start to climb in elevation, and you hit both of those or one or both of those as you're kind of either heading out toward Beaumont to the east, or if you're heading up the mountains up toward Angeles Oaks and some of those towns further up into the mountains, going one of the alternate ways to get up to Big Bear. We have several Native American groups that have lived in these mountains for thousands of years. We mentioned in our last video that the Serranos and the Cahuilla and several other tribal groups have been around in this region for thousands and thousands of years. Some of their predecessors have been here since potentially tens of thousands of years, some say, but they've been here a long time. The Serranos especially were ones that lived in our San Bernardino mountains. Serrano, the word, was given to these people, the name was given to these people by the Spanish when they first came into California up through Mexico. When they saw the Serranos, they named them that because that word means that they're the people of the pines, because they were in the pine forests, had villages and such places established there. Most of the time they did not live just in one village, but they would move around based on the season and the availability of some of the food sources they were trying to gather when we're talking about the Serranos. So they would spend most of the winter time in the valleys. So when it was super cold and snowy and stormy and things like that, up in the mountains, some of those food sources they depended on weren't really available. Then they would go down into the valley where it was a little warmer, and they had village space there. And then in the spring, they would start to venture back up into the mountains and would forage and hunt and gather for various things that they needed, food and other resource-wise. You've also got some of the Cahuillas living in the mountains, more toward Mount San Jacinto area, but also in some of the Little San Bernardino mountains. And eventually some of the Cahuilla and some of the Serrano intermarried, and that's where you get our Morongo band of Mission Indians, is from kind of that intermarriage between tribal groups. And they have some of their historical stuff further toward the Morongo Basin area. You can even, fun fact, some parts of our mountains, you can even find boulders or rocks where there are hewn out parts of it. So you've got like a hole, a partial hole, or bowl almost, that has been ground out of it. And what the Serranos used to do with that is they would use that with a stone or something else to grind down seeds and nuts and things like that to use in cooking and for other things. And so it's kind of like our modern day mortar and pestle that you'd use to grind down plant material. They would use just the rocks and the boulders that were around them that were shaped properly to be able to do that. Yeah, so we got some cool history there. We've also got mines and things like that. Actually, the largest gold strike in Southern California happened in our mountains, in Big Bear area in the 1860s, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. 1860, I don't know if that was actually Cinco de Mayo yet at that point, but regardless, May 5th, 1860, a man by the name of William Francis Grizzly Bill Holcomb was known for helping some of the prospectors that were up in the mountains looking for gold and having trouble and some of them were starving. He was known for being the one that was hunting some of the bears to get food for the people that were there. And at some point, he stumbled upon an area that had some gold in it, and he collected it. And he took it down the mountain and realized suddenly that the people down in the valley realized that he had more gold than they thought, and suddenly there was a bunch of people flocking to the Holcomb Valley area near where Big Bear is today to look for gold. So that sparked a big gold rush. We also have logging history in these mountains. A lot of trees were utilized for building material down in the valleys, as well as material for crates that were being used to transport the citrus, the oranges, and some of the other things that were being produced and grown down in the valleys. Some people found that some of the types of wood that were up in these mountains worked best for transporting the oranges, and so they would utilize that. We also have some of our mountain lakes were kind of created partially because of either logging activities or because of the communities that grew out of the logging and mining industries. And then we've got some just iconic areas within these mountains that have been used in movies, commercials, TV shows, all these things. So a really cool place to be. You've got fluctuations in elevation anywhere from like 2,000-3,000 feet above sea level all the way to over 10,000 feet above sea level. A fun fact about our tallest mountain, Mount San Gorgonio, you can actually, from the top of Mount Whitney, which is our tallest mountain in the southern, the lower 48 states of our country, the second tallest mountain in our country, from the top of Mount Whitney in kind of central northern California, you can actually see the top of Mount San Gorgonio on a nice clear day, which is kind of crazy. So pretty cool. From there, I think we can transition down into our species. So Josh has started on a rubber boa. This is one of our at-risk species that we're going to talk about. So it is a threatened species, considered threatened by the state of California. It does not have currently a designation with our federal endangered species under the Endangered Species Act for the country, but it is considered threatened for our state. These are reptiles, so we didn't talk about reptiles last time, but we get to this time. They are going to be found within areas that seem to have kind of scattered rocks or large outcrops. Usually they're going to emerge in the springtime, so a lot of cold-blooded animals are not going to be as active and out and about in the cold winter time because they are cold-blooded. They require warmth to be able to move around, and so once the weather starts to warm up, the sun comes out a lot more, the rocks heat up, they're able to kind of slither out, crawl out, spend some time warming their bodies on the rocks and in the sun and on the soil, and then from there they can kind of move a little bit more around and hunt and do what they need to survive. So usually in the springtime they're going to start emerging snakes, lizards, other reptiles and such. So yeah, when that happens, it seems like they're usually going to be preferring clumped and scattered rocks, or like outcroppings, larger rocks once it's getting a lot warmer. Their main active season is April to October, but that is partially dependent on how cold it actually is at the time. They also, are gonna be found often sunning themselves. If it's like morning or a cooler day getting warmer, they're gonna spend some time against a rock, against a log, against something that's warmer than they are, and they're gonna utilize that heat from that object to warm themselves up. They can be found in forest litter, so on the leaves and logs and things that have fallen on the ground. They might kind of hide out under there because it's a place for them to hide from predators, but also just to have kind of a little bit of coverage as well.
Do they come in different sizes?
Good question. Let me see if I can find anything
It's looking good.
Go ahead and transition back so you guys can see it.
Okay. So they tend to be at max about 19.5 inches, so that's less than 2 feet long. If you think of 2 feet, 24 inches. If you're talking most, but some females can actually be a little longer than that at around 22 inches. So a little under 2 feet long, usually max. Obviously, when they're younger, they're going to be a lot smaller and grow a little bigger as they get older. They're usually going to be smaller based on that length, with a stout body, kind of smooth, shiny scales. The skin can look kind of wrinkled as they're kind of moving around. They can come in colors ranging from light brown to dark brown to pinkish to tan, maybe even olive green or orange, yellow, cream colored on the bottom. But they're usually going to be kind of one color on the top and then the lighterish color on the bottom. They're not going to have a bunch of patterning on them, so if you think of some rattlesnakes or king snakes, coral snakes, or things with stripes, they're not going to have stripes or diamonds or spots or anything like that. They're usually just kind of that monochrome, one color on the top and then one color on the bottom, kind of uniform throughout. Young snakes are going to be a little more pink or tan, but they may be brightly colored as well. But usually they're still going to be kind of that one single color on the top and one on the bottom.
Do you know what they eat?
Yes, so they eat mostly birds, lizards, or small mammals. They're not going to be going after anything super gigantic.
Okay.
They are, more likely going to go after whatever they can find. They aren't super big, so they're not going to be going after anything ginormous. All in one go. They don't have venom, so if they bite you, they're not as likely to bite you, but also they're not poisonous, so it's not going to necessarily be a dangerous venomous bite if they do bite you.
Do they have a lifespan? That's pretty long, or is it shorter? I'm like, yes, they have a lifespan, but like, is it long or short? Ooh, love the shading. It's so pretty.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I hope you guys are having a wonderful evening. All of you wonderful people.
It looks like if some of them have been had as pets or in captivity, they've lived up to 11 years, but I think in the wild usually that's a little less than that. But yeah, not super long compared to some animals, but good length. They're young when they have them. They actually have live young, so unlike the tortoise we talked about on Monday, they don't have eggs that they lay. They actually have live snakes that they give birth to. and usually it's a group of about 2 to 8 of them, and they're each about like 7 inches long. Usually born in the later time of the snakes being out and about, so like August or September. Yeah, they live in burrows. So similar to some of those animals we talked about in the Mojave desert areas, Colorado desert areas, a lot of those animals burrow. And in the mountains, you'll get some animals that burrow as well. We've got ground squirrels and gophers and moles and things like that. Foxes, things that have burrows or dens. And these rubber boas are going to be included in that group. But they may also kind of hide under rocks or within sand that's kind of damp, or rotting logs and that forest litter on the ground, so those leaves and pine needles and things like that, if they need to kind of hide quickly away from their home. They can swim well, and they can also climb up into shrubs or small trees. They have a prehensile tail, so that enables them to kind of grasp hold of things and help them kind of maneuver in branches and things like that. Alondra is demonstrating somehow with her hands.
I was like, swim.
Oh, swim. They are constrictors, so we talked about they're not necessarily venomous. That's because they're not really biting their prey to stun it or cause it to freeze or debilitate it. They're actually constricting it. So if you think of like a boa constrictor, this is technically a boa constrictor. It's just a small one. So they're gonna kind of squeeze the lizards or the birds or the small mammals or whatever other things they're eating, and then they will eat it more likely whole than chewing it or anything like that.
And then you said they don't have venom.
No venom.
Okay.
I mean, they probably could bite if they felt threatened, but that's not their main way of eating things. They're not necessarily poisonous like a rattlesnake or something like that. Supposedly, some of them will actually curl into a little ball if someone tries to pick it up, which you don't really want to go up to these snakes and just immediately start picking them up. But they're pretty docile. Pretty calm usually, and apparently they just kind of curl into a ball when people have tried to pick them up before. They can be nocturnal, but they can also be something else we haven't talked about yet. So we mentioned nocturnal is an animal that is most active at night, maybe hunting at night, doing things like that. Diurnal is something that is most active in the daytime. Though each of these might be active other times of day if needed for survival, but they're more often going to kind of stick to night or day. But then you have something called crepuscular. Everyone say it together.
Crepuscular.
Very good. And crepuscular animals are most active at dawn and dusk. So things like coyotes, mosquitoes. Some other things, deer might fall in this category. There are other animals that fall in this category. But some rubber boas may seem to prefer hunting in the dawn or dusk, and that might partially depend on what they're eating. So if they're eating animals that are more crepuscular, they may kind of imitate that habit, that lifestyle, in order to get their prey. Same with nocturnal. If they're hunting something more active at night, then they're probably going to be more active at night when hunting that.
Nice. Love the drawing. I think it's so good. I think those are some of the questions that I had pretty much on this.
Okay. I think the final things I'll say for this one, just some of the threats to them and their habitat. So any activities on public lands where their habitat is will affect them, as we're talking about development on those lands. If we're talking about off-highway vehicles, which we mentioned in our previous video, these are vehicles like off-roading vehicles things that are going to be doing recreational activity like driving off-roading type of stuff. When they're driving in places that are not designated for that, usually there's a reason why they're not designated in that area, and often it might be because that's habitat for certain organisms that you don't want to be messing their habitat up for. And so that can affect these organisms, these boas. Fuel harvesting, so places where wood is being cut down for fuel, for wood to be burned, that will affect some of the places that they use to live in and the area around them. Timber harvesting, same sort of thing. You've got trees being cut down, as well as domestic cats might even prey on them in some areas. So people's pet cats, if they're near their yards. And then you've also got things like roadway mortality, which is where you've got like vehicles actually running them over or hitting them when they're trying to cross over a road. Yeah, so those are some of the main causes of death or injury or loss to habitat or things like that for these. Looks like Josh has moved on to our Bear Valley sandwort. This is a threatened species, considered threatened under the Endangered Species Act for our country, for the U.S. It is a perennial herb, so it's actually going to grow multiple years over. It's not just going to grow 1 year and then die off and grow from seeds another year. It's going to kind of grow. It's going to have flowers. Those will produce pollen. If it's pollinated, then those flower structures will produce seeds, and then those seeds will go on to produce other plants, but that same plant will be able to kind of come back up from the roots the next growing season. They are native to California. They are also endemic to California, which means they've got a limited range, and that's pretty much only in certain parts of California. They tend to grow on very specific habitat, pretty much only pebble plain habitat, as well as some maybe dry hillsides, but mostly they're going to be just on that pebble plain area. And within our mountains, we only have about 8 clusters of these flowers that they've found. And some of them are on federally protected land. Some of them are, at least one of them is owned and protected by the Nature Conservancy. And then some of them are also on private land within the San Bernardino Mountains. But the majority of them are threatened. That's 6 out of the 8 are threatened. Sorry, there's 9, but 8 main ones that they have most of the clusters in. And even then, it's not like the whole section is fully covered with these flowers. It's just that that's kind of where they're mostly together. A lot of these areas have a lot of quartz type metamorphic rocks. Metamorphic rocks are just rocks that have been formed because of a lot of high heat and pressure that they were exposed to, usually underground, and now they've been revealed either by erosion or some other processes that brought them up to the surface. And for whatever reason, these plants especially like to grow in areas of the mountains where maybe there's a pinyon juniper woodland, so an area that's kind of got some mixed pinyon pines and some junipers and other trees, and then they've got almost like an opening within that woodland that has these pebble plains, and that's where these flowers will grow. We've got a couple of them in places like Baldwin Lake area, Sugarloaf Mountain, Fawnskin, Holcomb Valley, and Bear Valley. This is why they're called the Bear Valley Valley sandwort, or the Big Bear Valley sandwort, because they're in the Bear Valley, Big Bear Valley area. They are perennial, like I said. They have a 2 to 3 month growing season.
Oh, Alex.
Wow. No regard in me.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't even say anything.
But yes, they have a 2 to 3 month growing season when they're going to grow up from those roots, and then they're going to bloom from around May to August. So much of kind of the late spring going into the summer. So with flowers, not all flowers bloom at the same time, and that is helpful for different pollinators and other animals that are dependent on parts of those flowers to live and grow and do what they need to do. And so these flowers are going to be blooming mainly in the late spring to summer, late summer, and that's going to help some of those pollinators that maybe need that pollen or that of the other parts of the flower for various things at that time. They are indicator species, which means they are going to indicate how stable their habitat is. So if their habitat is having issues, there's something not quite right within those pebble plains, then those plants are going to start having issues as well. And that's a good indicator of something's not right. Something will likely need to be done to help those habitats out. Let's see. They tend to have stems that are about 2 to 6 inches long, so at max maybe about half a foot tall, and the stem length. Their leaves tend to be only about 2 millimeters or less wide, so very thin, and not very wide, I should say, and then about 0.16 to 0.5 inches long. That's 0.4 to 1 centimeter, so not very long, not very wide for the leaves themselves, and they can be kind of needle or thread-like, and they don't have like a lot of they don't have nerves or things like that, and sometimes they can be a little waxy looking if you're looking at them. Their flowers are usually white with purple anthers and stamens. So if you look at this picture, we picked one that's got that. The anthers and stamens are utilized in the pollination process. So those are those portions of the flower that are going to hold the pollen. And then you've got some of your other parts of the flower, like your pistil and things like that are actually going to collect that pollen in the middle of the flower, and if enough of the pollen actually lands on it, then you're going to get what's called a pollen tube that actually grows down from where the pollen lands on the flower, and it's going to go down into where it's going to help to fertilize the what's eventually going to become the seed or seeds for your flower. These do grow in inflorescences, clustered arrangements of multiple flowers. They also call it an open cyme inflorescence, CYME. And these are going to develop into 1 or 2 purplish toothed seeds, they call them, when they are pollinated properly. And I think they're just called that because of how kind of what they look like when they are formed. So you can see.
I like the colors. The colors
you
are
can
pretty.
see they've got some fun colors to them. Sometimes they may not be quite as purpley, but that is a good indicator that that's what it is, a sandwort. These sandworts are part of the Caryophyllaceae family, which includes your carnations and your pinks, which are 2 different kind of sub-families. They're specifically part of the pinks family, but they are a bit related to carnations. Most of the carnations you see in bouquets and things like that have been bred to look like that over a long, long time. But there are still some wild kind of carnation and other flowers that are in existence in the wild. These are wildflowers, obviously we've mentioned. They tend to be kind of shorter and clumped on the ground, which kind of goes along with that pebbly, dry landscape that they're going to be growing on. They kind of clump together in patches. Any questions so far on these ones?
I think I wrote one down. I put, are they endangered?
So they're not considered endangered under the Endangered Species Act, but they are considered threatened. So they're still at risk.
Mm-hmm.
And because there are only 8 or 9 sets of them within, let me try to see if I can find where I put. Yeah, so their habitat is limited to only about 545 acres total anyway. So if you compare that to some other flower species that may have a lot of habitat that they're taking up, these ones don't have a very wide range of habitat. They pretty much only grow in that pebbly plain type of habitat that's got what's called a loam soil composition, and they're not really going to do well anywhere else without that loam soil, that pebble, kind of quartzite pebble plain area amongst woodlands. And so because they've got a very limited habitat, those habitats have been fragmented, have been broken apart, or cut up by development and other things like that, because it's experienced other things that have kind of reduced the amount of good viable habitat around them, then that means they are pretty threatened. Their habitat is threatened, so as a result they're threatened because they're very dependent on it.
I love the colors are really pretty. But yeah, that was, besides that, is there anything, like, do these plants like tend to have other species or something eat off of them? You know?
Well, they are herbs, they are wildflowers, so anything that eats probably forbs or herbs, so forbs being the wildflowers, herbs being herbaceous plants, anything that's going to be eating those in that area might eat them. I did notice at least one of the pictures I saw of them had a bee fly that seemed like it had its proboscis type mouthpiece tongue ready to try to, well, probably not, ready to try to get nectar or something from it. So it's possible that there are pollinators actually visiting these and collecting pollen or nectar or leaf petal parts for various things that they need. So it's highly possible you've got some insects utilizing them for food or nest material. And then you could also have some herbivores also utilizing them that live in that area.
That interesting. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen this plant ever. And so that was my first time seeing it, and I just love how the colors have just like captured my attention. So, but those are some really interesting facts. And you mentioned the location of them, and yeah, I really enjoyed. There was one actual thing that I wanted to ask. Is there something that makes them stand out in regards to like their features besides their colors?
The colors are a big one.
Okay.
I think one of the things, they've got that kind of star patterning to the petals. So you've got kind of a 5-part petal arrangement, and then they've got long sepals, which are kind of like the leaf type parts that will protect the buds. That are, well, I say long. They're like 4 millimeters long, so not that long. But compared to the flower and the bud, they're similar length to the petals themselves. And then they've got kind of purpley seeds as well.
Yeah, the colors are definitely very pretty.
Their main threats for their habitat and themselves, things like off-road vehicle activity. A lot of people like to go off-roading in places that are sandy or more dirt covered, and their habitat is gonna include a lot more kind of sand, dirt material. So that does make them more susceptible to having that happening over their burrows, or where they're sitting. They can also be kind of threatened by things like people actually cleaning up leaf litter. There are places where you might think it is unsightly to keep a lot of leaves and things on the ground. In forests, that's actually a natural hiding place, decomposition place for decomposers and prey animals and things like that that kind of utilize some of those materials for hiding, for nest material, for food, things like that. And so clearing those out kind of takes away some of their hiding places, which isn't as helpful for them. Vandalism even of their home areas has been a thing. One of the biggest things that kind of they believe started out the beginning of their habitat being encroached upon and fragmented, broken apart, was actually the creation of Big Bear Lake. I think some think that when that was first kind of introduced into the area, it actually kind of broke up some of the habitat. That started in the 1880s. They first started kind of constructing it, and most of that area where the lake is now was kind of meadows with pebble plains on them. And so when they constructed the lake, that did take away a good portion of what was potentially part of their habitat. And because it's underwater now, it has been lost to them because they're not water snakes. So yeah, that's one of the bigger things. And then some of the other things are just anything that's kind of messing with or encroaching on the smaller bit of space they have left.
Oh, nice. I love the pictures. So pretty. And I love how the colors really resemble just like the picture. So that's super cool.
We can move on to our final one if you don't have any further questions.
Yeah, no, you pretty much answered all the questions that I did have. But yeah, I just wanted to know a little bit more about the features, and I'm glad we went over a couple of new things that I never knew about.
So our next one is an amphibian. This is our mountain yellow-legged frog, Rana muscosa.
Ooh.
So if you think of Spanish, rana means what, Alondra?
Frog.
There you go. And obviously that's coming from Latin, just like the scientific name is. So they've got that common root word there. These frogs are endangered, both according to our federal Endangered Species Act as well as California's Endangered Species List. So it is endangered for both. They are found in two main parts of California, but the smallest habitat portion is in our county, within a couple parts of our San Bernardino Mountains. But still not super big section. In Southern California, they're isolated mostly in the San Gabriel and San Bernardino Mountains and a little bit of the San Jacinto area, but that's not necessarily in our county. They were once known to be found in the Sierra Nevadas and quite a ways further north from, or a bit further north from there. But some of the populations they once thought were part of this species, they've actually redesignated as a different species name. But we still have some of these mountain yellow-legged frogs in the high Sierras. They just are quite a ways away. In Southern California, they tend to live anywhere from 1,200 to 7,500 feet above sea level, so quite high. That's getting closer to kind of elevation of Big Bear area. If you're looking at the top of that range at least. They tend to be restricted to areas where there are streams, in habitats that have ponderosa pine trees, hardwood, kind of conifer trees. So conifers are trees that are cone bearing, hence the conifer. They grow cones, and these are going to be like harder wooded trees, montane specifically, meaning that they're up at specific elevations within the mountains. And then you have your montane riparian habitats as well that they tend to be found in. They mainly are gonna eat aquatic and terrestrial invertebrates. So invertebrates are types of animals that don't have your traditional backbone and skeletal system. Things like worms or small insects, things like that, are considered invertebrates. Well, insects in general, but these are invertebrates. So some of these might be food for the frogs, depending on if they're aquatic terrestrial. That just means if they're in the streams, or on land near the streams. They tend to favor those kind of terrestrial insects, though, it seems.
Does it have a lifespan?
Yeah, so usually they're going to start as eggs. Those eggs are usually laid in shallow parts of the stream, kind of attached to gravel and rocks at the bottom, and that keeps them from floating away down the stream. They are eventually going to hatch and develop into tadpoles, which may take a couple winters through to be finished with fully developing. As a tadpole, it has to go from being able to swim to having legs, being able to hop or crawl out of the water. That is part of the unique thing with amphibians. They usually start in the water and come out of it. If you think of a frog versus the tortoises we were talking about before, the tortoises are going to be on land the whole time, not really in the water, using water to drink, but not laying eggs in the water. Their eggs are hard shelled. These guys are going to be in the water when they start out in soft little eggs that are then going to hatch. They'll be in the water for part of their life, and then they will change into a frog and be kind of in and out the rest of their lives. As far as age goes, let me see.
I meant to say, does it have a long lifespan or a short lifespan?
Let's see if I've got it here. That's not.
Love the drawing.
Go ahead and transfer back to.
Ooh, I know you guys will like it too. The colors.
A little derpy one.
The details. So cute. Love it. Just love how animated it looks. So cute.
Oh, there it is. Okay. I'm not seeing something that indicates full lifespan.
Okay.
I might be missing it here. But it breaks it down. So you're gonna have from the egg to
Mhm.
hatching into a tadpole, it's going to be about 18 to 21 days.
Okay.
And then to develop all the way into when it's ready to fully change over into the frog, be ready to leave.
Mhm.
It's anywhere from 1 to 3.5 years, depending on probably conditions within the water and food source.
Mhm.
And then from there, it's going to be about 3 to 4 years once they've reached full reproductive maturity, ready to have their mate and have their own fertilized eggs that will then carry on the generations after them.
Mhm.
So yeah, it seems like it's at least let's say max 4 years for the reproductive, 3.5, 7.5. Yeah, about 7 to 8 years,
Okay.
maybe max. At least to be fully mature. As far as beyond that, I'm not seeing where it says
Okay.
the full age, but I might have skipped over it somewhere.
And then, Grace, what do they like to eat?
Sorry, I was re-looking at that. It's still melting. Okay, so they tend to, like we said, eat aquatic and terrestrial insects.
Mhm.
They may also eat other amphibians that are probably smaller than them. Not sure what exactly that means for them.
Mhm.
But when they're tadpoles, they'll be eating algae. So if you think of like streams or ponds, you'll see some of that kind of green
Yeah.
stuff that's within it. That algae is going to be usually photosynthetic, so it's
Mhm.
able to do photosynthesis. That's usually the green algae are able to do that. And so they're kind of making their own food and storing energy and such within their structures. And then there are animals and things that'll feed on them, like these tadpoles. So they tend to kind of eat on those, and then once they change into frogs, then they'll change into more carnivorous, insectivorous, specifically eating insects, maybe amphibians. Supposedly, they've been known to be cannibalistic or turn cannibalistic if in captivity. So, whatever they were being held in captivity for, they eventually, something happened there and they were eating each other. But
Yikes.
it seems in the wild they tend to more so prefer insects.
Do they have any specific like predators?
Predators.
Love it. It's smiling.
It is funny. He's one happy boy in his little pond.
This little pond.
I'm curious if it has a long tongue. I'm just curious. I don't think I've ever seen it other than in cartoons, like with the long tongue. So I'm just curious. Like, do they actually have it, like in the movies, TV shows?
Okay.
Yes, and does it actually make that noise?
Some frogs do croak.
Oh, okay.
We actually, up in the mountains right now, have more frogs croaking now since it's springtime. And they've emerged from their hibernation down in the bottom of the ponds, or down in the mud in the winter.
Because my sister used to have a frog and it would snore. His name was Pablo. He was my favorite. Pablo. Either Pablo or Pancho. Oh!
Huh? I'm just
kidding. All I knew is that he would snore. I was like, I don't know who snores louder, my dad or the frog. Dad, if you're watching this, I'm sorry.
thrown right under the bus.
Hopefully.
Anyways, back to the question.
What?
Yes. Oh.
Sorry. Someone called these mountain gnomes because they sit next to the ponds, and you have to be careful that you don't like knock them over.
Oh. And they're carnivorous.
Carnivorous.
In confined places.
Oh, there we go. Wait.
Confined places? Was it confined places, Grace?
Yeah, they're in Southern California. They're confined to our three kind of mountain ranges around San Bernardino, Riverside County. So you've got your San Gabriel Mountains have some, your San Bernardino Mountains have some, and then around San Jacinto.
No, but you said they're carnivorous in what?
Insectivorous. They're insectivores, which means they eat insects.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a type of
like
carnivorous.
bugs.
They eat meat, but they're specifically eating insects as their protein meat. It looks like some fish actually prey on tadpoles. So things like non-native trout species that have been added into mountain lakes for fishing purposes, sport fishing, things like that. Some of those actually eat the tadpoles, and that has reduced some of the numbers of this species of frog in some places in both Southern California and the Sierra Nevadas. But you've also probably got some birds and other things that might eat them from land aerial perspective as well.
And then I had another question.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit more about their features? I know, like, I just keep asking about the tongue, but, like, can you tell me a little bit more about the features, like their colors? Yes.
Yeah. Let me find where I had that in here.
I love that
and
color.
I scrolled too far down.
It's just so cute. It's so smiley. You made it so happy. I love it.
He's a frog chilling.
And he's
Frog chilling.
He's having a good day.
He's having a great day. Make it a great day or
Looks
not.
like he
That
just got
choice is yours.
His finger cure. I don't know what you call that.
Did you hear what I said? I said, make it a great day or not. That choice is yours. And I hope you all choose today to make something terrific.
Don't have a good day. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
So, they are going to be medium-sized compared to frogs, which probably is a good place to start because what is a frog size?
Frog size.
Yes.
Ribbit.
Males are slightly larger than slightly smaller than females. I completely switched that. They are usually going to be 1.5 to 3 3/4 of an inch long. So let's see, 1 inch, 2 inch, maybe about that big. So not super gigantic, but a good size. You're probably going to see that better than some frogs that are itty bitty. Their colors vary. Individuals may have a mix of browns and yellows on the upper part of their body, but they can also have reds and grays and greenish browns. Most have darker spots or splotches on the back side, the top upper part of them where their back is. They may also have some kind of lightish orange or yellow on the bottom or underside of them, as well as the underneath part of their back legs. So as Josh has right there, you've got kind of a yellowish color on the underside where the legs and the belly and part of the mouth is. And then you've got more of that kind of greenish brown, grayish on the top.
Love that.
Yep, and then they can have swatches of darker things as well.
Splashy.
Darker
Colors. Rainbows. I love them. Oh my goodness, the pictures. So cute. It's the smile for me.
Oh, you're gonna like this, Alondra. They can be found in wetlands,
Oh.
where there are marshes or swamps.
I just have to tell you guys about my love for swamps. It's so real. So that was the most beautiful fact I've heard all day.
She needs help.
I love swamps.
Oh.
We're going to the swamps.
So they can be found some places with
This I know it.
streams, like I said, but potentially also some lake areas or rivers. Anywhere where there's going to be enough water for them to have a place for their tadpoles and their eggs to develop. And where they, as the adult frogs, are going to be able to have a place to lay their eggs, as well as have a food source both in the water and out of it. They usually aren't going to travel too far from the lake itself or the water source itself in general. So having a place that has that water, as well as a shallowy part of that water, and soil with enough moisture in it for them to kind of dig down in it and sit in it in the times of the year when the lake or the stream or the pond is frozen, or is a little lower down because it's more the dry season or the winter season.
Nice.
They tend to utilize the sun to warm them up. Similar to our rubber boa, they're gonna kind of moderate, change their temperature of their body using the heat of things around them, and the sun is one of the hotter things.
Mhm.
So they'll move between water and land, trying to stay in warmer, shallower parts near the shoreline if it's a lake or something bigger than like a pond that's not super deep. And then they're gonna mainly be active more toward the daytime when they can utilize that heat from the sun and the rocks and things, shallow water around them. They usually will utilize the same habitat for summer and winter time. And the adults and the tadpoles can actually overwinter for up to 9 months, spending time in the bottoms of a lake or a pond, or pools in a stream or streams, as deep as 5.5 feet deep. And that's just their protective measures to keep themselves from freezing. So if they're down in the very bottom of that lake area, usually it takes a lot longer for a lake to freeze all the way down, that far down, 5.5, 6 feet, than the surface is going to. So that's a way that they kind of escape being frozen, but also remain in a place where they can kind of be dormant over the winter and conserve energy and such until they're ready to kind of be more active once the world above them is done being frozen and super cold.
Cute. I love it. They're so pretty.
These frogs will often crouch on rocks or clumps of grass within a few jumps of the water. So if they need to get away from a predator, they can just bloop, 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 and then they're free, or at least further away from it. They may even dive into the water and hide under rocks, or kind of rest at the very bottom of the body of water if it's not too deep. They may even bury themselves in kind of the sand and stuff at the bottom of that body of water if they feel they need to. Usually they don't reproduce and lay their eggs until there's no ice and such blocking the movement of water within the body of water. That's going to be too cold for their eggs and also hard for them to really move around and such. Yeah. They are mainly diurnal, so mainly day active. Like I mentioned, that sun's going to be very important for them. Yeah. Any other questions we have?
I think I got it all. And I've learned a lot from these beautiful things. But I love the new facts that I got. But my most favorite, the swamps, guys.
She likes
The
her frogs.
swamps for me.
Oh my goodness.
So, in review, we covered mountain regions and these 3 living
These
creatures.
organisms.
Organisms, that's it.
Another word for living
I would have said the same
creature.
thing.
Living thing.
We had our snake,
Yep, our rubber boa.
and we went to our,
Bear Valley sandwort.
and we ended with our
Mountain yellow-legged frog.
also known as Frog Boy. No, I'm just
Frog
kidding.
boy.
Yes.
Froggy Boy.
What?
I agree.
Oh my goodness.
And love the colors, love the drawings, Josh. You did a great job on it.
Thank
So
you.
we'll finish out this segment just talking about some of the biggest threats to habitat and some of these organisms, as well as some of the other ones within their habitats. And we'll finish out with kind of similar to our last video, kind of some things that we can do as society and then as individuals, as people able to influence the some of the things that lawmakers are doing within our areas, things of that nature, things we can do to help out these habitats and their inhabitants, including ourselves as humans. So things like ecosystem or habitat degradation, so things being degraded or destroyed, fragmented, even ecosystem or habitat loss or modification, changes made to the ecosystem can affect all 3 of these organisms. Drought can be a big thing, especially for things like the frog or our sandwort that are going to require probably a little more water than our boa to be able to survive. Things like industrial or recreational development, so the development of places like campgrounds or even ski areas might pose some trouble for some of the habitats that these organisms require. Wildfires, both natural wildfires, fires started accidentally or on purpose by people, and then some of the really big raging wildfires we get that happen as a result of a lot of fuel within the forests can be a big issue for these habitats that are threatened or vulnerable and have those threatened, endangered, and vulnerable species. Climate change related ramifications, native plant disruption or damage, so like people coming through with off-roading vehicles where they're not supposed to and running over some of the plants or the animals, or causing the cave-in of burrows of some of the boas. You've got invasive species that bring competition, maybe where there was no competition for food and other resources before, or you've got them bringing in pathogens, so things like disease or viruses that some of these native species are not used to having to combat, and that can really kill off some of them. We've seen that some with our mountain yellow-legged frog as well. We've got things like bark beetles that have and other organisms getting into some of the trees that have actually killed off large swaths of trees, and that can really affect some of these ecosystems that require some shade materials. If you no longer have the trees, you no longer have the shade or the places to be cool or hide as far as like the boa go. Fuel wood and lumber harvesting, species loss, increased erosion or surface debris clearing we talked about, that can affect the burrows and the hiding places for things like your rubber boas, which Josh and Alondra are imitating somehow.
Boa.
You've got human-wildlife conflict, vandalism, vehicular strikes, so vehicles running over, hitting these animals. You've got Soil compaction, so people going off trail or vehicles and other things compacting and pushing down on the soil, making it harder to have water get down into it, so you don't get some of that groundwater storage that may seep down downhill into some of your streams and lakes. You also aren't going to get easier access to the road that you might have gotten before for your rubber boas. And then things like cattle, trampling and overgrazing areas that could have affected some of those habitats that those meadow habitats that some of the sandworts were in back in the days when there was a lot of grazing of cattle in the valley, the mountain valleys. And then you've got mining practices, extraction, changes to water systems, so like the addition of lakes or the redirection of streams is going to affect your flowers, your sandworts, as well as your frogs. And then increased predation from domestic cats and things like that that maybe weren't there previously. That's going to affect your boas and some of your other things as well. What can we do as people? We can help to maintain trails, help with erosion control, avoiding or reducing the amount of conflict, human-wildlife conflict. So maybe creating corridors or something like that that's going to help animals to cross over or under roads that are in areas where they're migrating more frequently on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. That's going to hopefully reduce kind of them being hit or run over by vehicles. Using designated highways or roads or trails or places for off-roading vehicles. And then ensuring that commercial leasing or residential agreement terms and Forest Service management plans are not permitting the activities that are going to be we okay here?
It's great.
These habitats. We've got some jokesters here in the front. We can also help with ecological reserve establishment, so making more protected lands around where some of these habitats are, and then negotiating with private landowners that may have some of the critical habitats on their land, helping to remove graffiti or trash, providing research and habitat monitoring in these areas to learn more about these species. Some of our endangered and threatened species are rare enough. We don't know that much about them. So the rubber boa, some people may never have seen because they are pretty reclusive. They will kind of be on their own and you're not going to see them that much, secretive, if you will. So increased at least monitoring of the habitats can be helpful, both for understanding how the habitat's doing and how the organisms are doing. And then just getting involved in your community, advocating for these species and their habitats, learning more about them, helping even with conservation work. There's there are several San Bernardino Mountains Land Trust and other organizations within the mountains and even down in the valleys, Forest Service, NGOs, communities that are all doing different projects to help these habitats and help human ecosystem interactions. And then you can even participate in citizen science, things like iNaturalist. Some of these pictures we used are actually public domain images from iNaturalist that people took pictures of these animals or plants. So yeah, you can participate in things that actually help scientists and others do continued research on how these animals and plants survive where they survive, and that can actually help to further protect them and improve these ecosystems, as well as improve our use of these spaces.
Beautiful.
That benefits others.
Beautifully said, Grace. Beautifully said. I agree to all of it, including the swamps. I'm just kidding. But yes,
my.
I do agree to all of it. I think it's a lot of wonderful facts that I didn't know before. And I'm sure all of you are now informed as well.
I also like drawing a frog.
Super beautiful drawings. It's so cute.
It was fun.
So yeah, bottom line, there are plenty of cool things around us within San Bernardino County that you may never have realized before, but we're just trying to help kind of spread some of that knowledge around, help us get to know more about some of these things and what we can do to help them out. The image that is the background that you probably can't see very well, oh there you go, is an image taken looking out toward Mount Baldy and some of the other peaks in the San Gabriel Mountains. This is a view from our San Bernardino Mountains looking over the Valley of Enchantment, which is located just below Cedar Pines Park, one of the neighborhoods that I read off on that list earlier. These mountains in San Bernardino County are part of a transverse range, which means they're actually all along the San Andreas Fault. So they're along a fault line. The San Andreas Fault runs all the way from up in the Pacific Ocean near San Francisco, cuts through our state, and goes down toward the Gulf of Baja area. And it actually cuts right through the Cajon Pass. So it's going to be behind, north of the San Gabriel Mountains, kind of cutting through along the edge of those mountains and the high desert. And it's going to cut through the Cajon Pass, go through it, and then run kind of to the south of the San Bernardino and Little San Bernardino Mountains, and continue on south from there down toward Baja area. And that's part of what formed these mountains, part of what gives us the earthquakes we get. But it also is cool because that means you are currently looking at the picture, looking at two different tectonic plates. So if you remember tectonic plates from learning about the Earth's surface, it's broken into pieces. And we've got both the North American plate, which takes up a lot of North America, that the San Bernardino Mountains are situated on top of, and some of the high desert sitting on. And then you've got the California coast side that is on the Pacific plate, makes up most of the Pacific Ocean, and that's what those San Gabriel Mountains are sitting on. So that's pretty cool. Fun fact there. But yeah, mountains are cool. So are some of the animals and other things that are found there. People are fun as well. But yeah, any final words?
Just want to say thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking through and learning with us.
And thank you, Grace, for informing us about these wonderful things. And I look forward in learning more. And thank you so much for all of you who are watching and sticking through. And thank you, Josh, for doing these beautiful illustrations and for making it beautiful.
Well, thank you, ladies, for being so wonderful.
Oh my
No,
goodness.
I'm just kidding. But yes, thank you for
just
joining us.
I love it.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one. Please comment below if you did watch. And shout out to Alex and Stephanie
And Stephanie,
for
my best
joining us
friend.
on live. Even though Alex is a hater. We hope that you'll have learned
Did not
something
shout
from
me out.
tonight.
Yes. We hope you guys learned amazing new things, and thank you so much.
All right. We will see you on the next one on
Yeah.
Saturday.
Tune
Or
in.
you will
Tune
see
in.
us. We may not see you, but
Exactly.
you will
That's
see
true.
us on another one.
That's a
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Have a good night, guys.
Alrighty.